So a lot of the control and techniques that we usually think of with Aikido or Aikijujutsu are all upper body standing, some pins on the ground. But one little known fact about Daito Ryu in particular, so Daito Ryu Aikijujutsu, we want to utilize our lower body, our legs, the strength of our thighs to control our opponent. And you don't really see that a lot in most of the demonstrations, but I utilize that principle in a few different ways on passing guard and maintaining control, but also adding additional strength in some of my techniques. So we'll look at that today. I'm going to look at a traditional technique many of you may have not seen. It's a way to control your opponent with a pin from an old Daito Ryu position. So we'll look at a cross grab. We're not focusing on this technique. I'm just demonstrating how part of the old methods are to use the body to control. So yeah, I have her in a compromised position. I'm not going to say that this is a tried and true method during randori, but obviously the torque and everything can control her, but really where the pressure comes in is driving my knee into her body. This is kind of a crushing pressure. Everything else is kind of ancillary at this point, but this type of control is very common in some traditional pins, and we're going to look at not just knee on belly that we're used to, but how I utilize this pressure to control the opponent throughout the pass. Cross wrist grab, simple drop, pinning the hand, pulling the arm back, but a lot of pressure crushing the body. This makes it difficult to move and get up. Simple Toriando pass. I can grab the inside. A lot of people use this pressure and they force to the side that they want to go, and they block with the structure of this shin bone, and then they begin to pass to side control. Maybe there's a body lock, maybe it's simply knee on belly, maybe it's side control. Typically what happens though, if I'm trying to force, by the time I get over here, my opponent's hip escape is already available. That becomes a scramble. If I jump as fast as I can to knee on belly, she still has a strong hip escape, and this is still a scramble, it's a fight. But the main issue is that she's able to rotate her hips to perform a hip escape. So how do we block that with structure? By utilizing the strength of our lower body. So taking a look at that pressure again, and specifically the angle of the foot, it's hugely important because that's where our pressure is driving. So offline, sometimes I like to step over, obviously, but the angle of this foot, I really want to be deep because this prevents her from turning into me, mostly. As she turns in, now I can begin my side control or my knee on belly. Again, the worst scenario for me is I try to pass active, younger, mobile opponents like Amber. If I go straight to knee on belly, they're escaping and it becomes a much harder scramble. So as I make this pass, it's important that I continue pressure on the hip girdle and below. Some opponents are extremely flexible. They can throw their legs up, catch you in an arm bar, some type of inverted triangle. But I know when I keep my pressure on the hip girdle instead of just the stomach or the chest, it maintains a lot of control and pressure that eventually wears the opponent out, and then you can settle into a different position. So for example, again, offline, she sits up to attack. I come up to the outside and I'm pressing the thigh, I roll it into the hip. As I come down for control, I'm still focusing on the hip. Again, if I was up here and she's real flexible, she could, arm bar triangle, something like that. So the pressure staying on the hip girdle or below really helps me maintain control as I fight for grips. Even when I mount, typically I prefer to use my shin with constant pressure, forcing down. She'll try to fight, go ahead and fight. This really works your opponent's ab and their core, and I drive, and eventually I can come over and maintain mount. Take a look at going to mount again by maintaining that pressure on the hip girdle. This really wears the core out. It wears out the abdominal muscles because they want to bring their thigh up. They want to go to hip escape or knee elbow, and you're preventing that by maintaining pressure against these thighs. So again, looking at that, whatever my method is, this pressure here, pressure against that hip girdle. When I want to go to mount, I'm basically making my shin a frame, and I'm driving it down against her thighs, and that's pretty cumbersome against the abs, which makes this windshield wiper much easier at the end. So I don't always go to mount with this pressure. Again, I like to maintain the drive, but a lot of times with so much pressure on one side, they realize they can't turn in, they'll turn away. And of course we go to set up our choke. I can fall back into a bow and arrow, gentleman's choke. But one thing that I like to utilize is the lower end of the tail of this kimono. I can pull, I should have sufficient pressure here, but if she's blocking, it becomes kind of difficult. But there's two methods that I've used to employ a pretty strong choke with, again, the pressure from my lower leg. So I can put my knee into this and drive, which gives significant pressure, and I use that a lot, especially against larger opponents. But if I'm flexible enough or there's enough gi, I can actually windshield wiper my back leg, sit back and place this foot into the tail of the kimono, and then this pressure is significant enough to cause the tap. So let's look at the finish on that choke again with the leg assisted pressure as we've been focusing on. So whatever my grip, overhand, underhand that I have on the collar, sometimes it's hard to get the other piece and get pressure, especially because they're fighting to prevent this. But this tag at the bottom is usually pretty exposed. And again, if she rolls her back to the floor, she's probably going to get out. This is problematic. So I'll usually windshield wiper my back leg. So if she tries to roll back, there's a prop. And now I can bring this knee in or foot to cause the pressure. All right, thanks for taking a look at another video utilizing some old principles from Aikijujutsu and how they're just as effective in a live setting for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.